The topic of this video is Springer accuracy. This is a Springer piston air gun. It's a rather high-powered one. It's made by GAMO, who I have fired for life. I will never purchase another one of their products again. This is a fairly high-powered device. I mean, I got it because of the 1400 foot per second. I'm not going to lie. So I was duped into that right away. Subsequent research has shown that unless I can find some really good heavy pellets for this thing, I'm kind of doing myself a disservice. So I have been firing the big 10 grain pellets and stuff. Usually I fire these. These pellets fire fantastic out of this rifle. For whatever reason, they're a nice soft fit, and I have found that if you're having accuracy problems with a air rifle of any kind, if your pellet has a tight fit, you're going to be looking at dinner plate size groups. They just don't work out well if it's a tight fit. Any loose fit pellets I have ever bought, these and Bone Collector is another really good pellet for this gun. They also have a nice loose fit to them. I don't know if that corroborates with any of the findings of you other guys. There is certainly probably a point at which you are too loose, but I'm not going to get into that right now. Anyway, the topic I wanted to bring up is this has a 40-pound spring in it. So getting a scope to stay true on this thing is a nightmare. The scope it came with was this, which was totally destroyed by this gun. What was happening inside this flashlight is every time you fired the gun, basically the battery is bouncing all the way into this spring like this and then flying back into the light. And it eventually smashed it completely apart inside of there. We can see this. As you can see, it just rammed the battery right into the light. So this light didn't hold up for very long. The laser seemed to work okay. It does slide around after a while. Almost nothing you do would want to keep this thing from moving. It does have a set pin back in here, but even the set pin is crushing into the steel of the pressure chamber. Or actually, that's the spring chamber right there. So what I've had to do is remount this scope in such a way that it can no longer progress any further in this direction. Because of the way this gun is set up and the way it's engineered and how it fires, the scope always wants to travel in this direction. It's always going to go back at your face. And the reason for that is when the piston starts way back here in the gun and flies forward into the gas ram, when it hits, the gun attempts to take off and fly away, whereas the scope just wants to stay sitting there. And after about 20 shots from this gun, you'll see about a 1/4 inch of movement on this scope no matter how tight you tighten it. So I've had to glue it and also set both brackets up against a solid buttress of some kind. So hopefully this eliminates the issues. I've heard that this type of gun is not, or this type of scope is not going to work with this gun. It does have air gun shock reinforcement technology. But from the reviews I've heard, I just got ripped off. So I'm going to see how this scope holds up. This particular scope would not hold true over 2 to 3 shots. I mean, you could zero it in your whole life and never get it to work. It's just not going to happen. This is another model of sight that I tried. This is a high-dollar point-and-shoot sight from Shields. This is the second one that I've had to go get. 2 of them have broke. I went back and got another one. I'm not going to put this back on this gun because this gun is destroying everything I put on it, basically. I've heard that BSA is the only scope that can handle this gun. I'm starting to think that no scope can handle this gun and that this whole gun itself is just a marketing gimmick, perhaps. I don't know. I'm going to keep on trucking through this. Hopefully the heavy pellets help me out. But I'm going to go outside and shoot some of these rounds off and see if I can get this thing to zero. So this is kind of a review on the Walther scope. I'm not even sure how you pronounce that. But one of the things I want to mention to anyone who has a spring-loaded air rifle, if you are having horrible accuracy issues, it's because it's a spring air gun and you have to use the artillery hold. Now, you'll have to YouTube that. I'm not going to get into that. It's a whole other video, but look up artillery hold, and always remember this: the looser you hold this gun, the more accurate it's going to fire. Because if you grip this gun, it has so much shock in it. when that gas ram hits, that your body turns into a kinematic system where it goes like this. If you're connected to the gun, you and your body, because of the way your hips set up and your stance usually or whatever, just because it's on the right side of my body, it's going to swing left. And sure enough, I'm always shooting left when my targets are off. It's because you are kinematically connected to it. So when that gas ram goes forward, it brings you this way. It hits and pulls you down and to the left. It's not always down, but that's what's going on with these guns. So I have found that the looser I hold it, the better I can shoot. And we're going to see how this goes. And one more thing I wanted to point out. These things right here are pretty awesome for setting your right to left on your scope. They're not going to do you any good for getting the exact setting on your scope. They just get you on paper quicker, people say. But one thing they do exact and instantly and marvelously is get your left and right set. You just shove this in the barrel, it points a beam down range, and then you alter the crosshairs accordingly. So let's see how this goes. Okay, so this is the location that I'm firing from. You can see the target. I'll get the actual yardage eventually here, but I just want to give you a visual perspective. Firing at this plinker, I aimed directly dead center with a quick shot. No real hesitation, which gave me a beautiful point of impact. I mean, it's not where I aimed at, but it's good enough. That's a dead rodent. Now, this here is extremely impressive as far as the results I've seen from any other scope. Whether or not this is going to hold up is the actual topic of the video. You see how these shots here have drifted to my left. That is usually a result of kinetic linkage. Maybe when the gun is hinging from my body, but typically when I miss, it always veers off to the left, and I believe that to be a result of kinetic linkage with my body and the gun and the forward impact of the gas ram. Okay, we're back inside, and I'm putting the caps back on the scope. I'm going to go ahead and call that quits, even though we did see a lot of shots drifting to the left there. I think that may have just been kinetic linkage, like I said. So when this tin of pellets is gone, I'm going to fire the camera back up at this gun, and we're going to see whether or not Walther holds up to its ASR technology claims or not. So I think everyone's going to end up being right with this BSA thing. There is a chance that this gun is hopeless, that no scope can withstand the impacts it's generating. Because as I said, no matter how tight you tighten this thing, it was just scooting along in that direction. And this pin that's down into the frame here that's holding it is bashing into the metal and slowly making its way in that same direction. So I've glued the mounts. I've looked at getting some steel mounts. It costs about $34 for just these two pieces. I think that's what's going to happen. They also have the sticky felt wrapped around them. So this is the GAMO Varmint Hunter HP. Don't know what I think about this gun yet. One very important detail I would like to point out here about this entire video is that there is the old adage of using the proper tool for the proper job. This is not a target rifle, or a plinker as they're called. This rifle, in my opinion, especially because it's called the Varmint Hunter, was specifically made to be put in your closet or under your bed until some stray animal comes wandering into your property. A dog attacking your cats, a tomcat attacking your cats, squirrels or whatever tearing up your soffit, raccoons tearing up your soffit. This thing's just made to be shot, several times. It's an actual tool. It's not a target practice rifle. So for me to think that I'm going to zero this thing in and then just go out and shoot entire tins of pellets out of it is kind of asking a little much. This is an extremely high-powered rifle that was made to shoot heavy pellets at velocities over 1,000 foot per second. So I would love to chronograph this thing with some good 10-grain pellets, but I don't know. This is a hunting rifle. It's not made to shoot hundreds of shots. So maybe I'm just thinking wrong and expecting the scope to hold as long, because if I shoot 500 shots out of this and get mad because the scope ain't holding true anymore, well, if I would use this tool as intended, that's a lifetime. You won't use 500 pellets in your entire life if I were to simply use this as intended. I really don't think that. I do not have 500 raccoons in my lifetime in this area, though they do enjoy climbing into the soffit and destroying people's attics around this place. Okay, so this is a 7-shot spread I took. Out of 7 shots, you can see, I think we got these 4 here on the paper. So the scope has drastically dropped, or lost accuracy, I should say. So I'm under the impression that I need to dial this thing in almost every time I want to use it. Not necessarily, but I mean, if I want to go out and do a lot of shooting with it that day, it's best to dial it in before you even use the gun. Every time. Maybe dial it in and have it just sitting there waiting for when I need to use it, but for the most part, I'm going to determine if dialing in the scope every once in a while will at least hold it true enough. I did adjust this slightly in the past, but it was only for left and right. So I've lost about 3 inches there in accuracy. The precision's good, but the accuracy's way off. Precision is the term used to describe your grouping. If you have a tight group, that means the weapon is of a high precision. It's just not accurate. If the group was spread all over the place, it would have a poor precision. So if that means that we can bring this scope down and we'll get this tight little group in this area. So at least we have good precision. That's what you want, is a tight group. I was kind of wobbling around, but I'm going to go ahead and readjust this. I would say I probably fired 200 shots for it to get this bad. The gun was still usable by putting a little English on it, but you had to learn that English. I was basically dropping the scope down and firing in the far left, but anyway, that's that. Basically on this scale here, it's a 1/4 inch per 100 yards per foot. I did 10 clicks just as an intuitive adjustment. I don't know if you can see that. There's our target. And we're going to see what 10 clicks does. Okay, so 10 clicks down. Okay, so that was 5 clicks to the right. Looks like you could maybe use 1 click down and 1 click over to the right again, but it's been my experience that this is about as good as you're going to get with human error involved. So far I'm not very happy with the Welter scope. I'm going to see how many more shots I can get out of it, see how long it holds. As I said, this is an overpowered rifle in a bad way. It's not very accurate. You have to know how to do the artillery hold, and an excessive effort was needed to mount this scope. As you can see, I have glue all over it. Got it looking like crap. I had to use blue Loctite, and from what I hear, getting steel mounts is the next step that I could take, but they're like $30-some. So far the gun the scope doesn't appear to have moved at all. The Loctite and the remount with the buttress configuration, meaning I'm mounted directly up something that will impede any movement. Because before I had this scope slid forward, and every shot it was slowly sliding back. So there you go. We're going to see how long the accuracy holds this time. As I said, I probably fired 200 shots and maintained enough accuracy that I could hit that little pinger target out there. I had to start putting some English on it. I had to start firing low and to the right to get it to hit. And sure enough, I'm firing high left. So We'll see what happens.